Thank you, Chair. It's page 39 on strategic funding on Dumfries and Galloway Council. And I'm a board member of Dumfries and Galloway Multicultural Association, so I'd like to declare interest. Thanks.
Thank you. Minutes meeting 19th May, happy to move. Item Post Community and Customer Services Revenue Budget 2015-16. This report presents a positive position in terms of the service, working closely with Finance to achieve a balanced budget. This committee has provided the Director and staff with a clear direction, and I'm pleased that together members and officers have addressed a large range of issues to bring about a sound financial position. And Derek will answer any questions on the report. Anybody have any questions? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So about the details in 3.9. It says that there was service reserves to support agreed commitments in relation to area committee grants of 96,000. What area committee grants, I would like to know. That we had funded for Central. And also, same question as regarding the details on page 14, which is area committee grants of 177,000 that will be carried forward in 2016. What area committee grants are we talking about here?
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor McClung, yeah, the section you're looking at refers to earmarked committed funds, so obviously that's decisions that area committees have taken to award monies, but the money hasn't been drawn down, and that's a decision taken by P&R committee every year in terms of agreeing earmarked reserves. So can happily provide the member with a copy of the specific details that will relate to projects within each area committees, and they'll have been agreed by the P&R committee, so I'll happily provide that information. But that's what it refers to.
Yeah, regarding the area committee funding, we've had cuts for the last 2 years. Is this over and above what they're allocated centrally, or is this including in their allocation?
Purely and simply, the only money allocated to area committees is the money agreed, obviously, by the council. So it's not over and above that. It purely relates to earmarked committed funds that area committees have committed to but have not yet spent. So hence, it's been earmarked. So it's no additional money. It's purely drawdown, and therefore it's a technical kind of financial arrangement. But as I say, Policy and Resources Committee do scrutinise any earmarked committed funds. They've approved it, but I'll happily provide you with a list of these for your interest.
No, but I think we should say that actually this represents a movement from a bad position to a much better position. So I think I'm perfectly happy to make that clear. It wasn't very good, and it's much better now.
Thank you. Can we accept the recommendations 2.1 to 2.5? Very much. Item 5 is Communities Revenue Monitoring Report 2016-17. This report outlines the budget position up to 30th of June 2016. I'm assured by the Director, current projected overspend is being actively managed. Appendix 2 of the report provides a summary of the progress made with achieving the agreed budget savings, and I'm most pleased to see that virtually all of the 1.8 million savings have already been accounted for. And again, Derek will answer any questions on the report. Members? Any questions on the report? No? Members happy to accept recommendations 2.1 to 2.4? Thank you. Item 6, Communities Budget and Resources 2016-17, report by Director of Communities. We agreed at our last meeting to receive more details on the budget and resources for the Communities Directorate. This report provides this information. Also acknowledges ongoing work to support the reshaping process. Again, Derek will take any questions on this. Members? No. Jane?
It's a question which it just might not be able to be answered in this particular context. If one's looking at the grades, and it goes down on, I'm so sorry, I'm looking at Appendix 1, Communities Directorate Staffing. It's not really very easy to extrapolate from this kind of span of control, if you see what I mean. And I just don't know where I would look for that, if you see what I mean. In customer services, there are, let's say, between the director, the head of service, and band 13 plus, there are 6 posts against 267. In civic and local services, there are 3 against 236. Now, I know this is crude stuff, but where would I be able to see, and for the public, because the public think that there is a waste of money going out there. That's the kind of constant mantra. And so we've got to be able to say, as elected members, look, this is how this is managed, and these are the chiefs and these are the Indians, and it's a very respectable ratio between them. So I just throw that out there.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Maitland. I think the point you make relates to the Council's agreement in terms of management change, and as members are well aware, that's on the basis of the span of control, and more than happy now that the management structure is eventually starting to settle down, that we can start to provide you with that information. As you say, the overall position for the Directorate is that there's approximately 19 management posts at band 13 plus, looking after a staff grouping of 600 people. And therefore, on that basis, I think any management would, any organisation would accept that as a very reasonable overhead. However, what we need to do is provide you that in the specific detail for each of the services now that we're populating the management structure, and more than happy to do that over the next few weeks as that starts to evolve. What I would certainly confirm just now for all members is that certainly the ratios in communities does reflect the Council's agreement to management change, span of control, and ensuring that the highest priority is protecting jobs and services at the front line, and hence the vast majority of the community staff are actually, you're looking at, are in the bands 1 to 4, which very much reflects frontline staff delivering services, and we certainly believe that in essence is what the public are looking for, and the majority of our staff therefore are undertaking frontline key service delivery jobs.
Derek, any further questions? Andy? Then Patsy.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just through you, Derek, I know when organisations come to the Council for funding, we tend to have a management ratio cost against the project. Can we get some sort of clarification as whether the 3.5 for business management and the directorate overall cost of 1.2 million, which takes it quite considerably over the 10% mark, is that in line with how we expect organisations that we fund to operate, or is it outside the parameters?
We certainly don't give outside organisations any parameters. That's for them to determine. So therefore, that's their business. So certainly not something we would look at. I think the key thing just now with business management, and as members have had recently the information on the budget profile for all council services as part of your budget development process, what I would just remind members of is this is still very much a budget that we're finalising due to the change process. And certainly we're clear that business management costs need to be absolutely cut to the absolute bone, and therefore we're clear that any costs we incur in business management will be to the core minimum requirements. Obviously, as members well appreciate, whether it's data protection, whether it's complaints, there are core services that are now statutory that make a big contribution in terms of our responsibilities under business management. So these costs do reflect those statutory activities. So I'm certainly relaxed at this point that the costs we've identified are proportionate. However, as I've said in the covering report, we still are finalising this budget given the background to the scale of change, and it's still subject to some change, and certainly assure members that we're continually ensuring that business management overhead is kept to the absolute minimum.
Thank you. I just wonder if you could explain, Director, the external recharges and internal recharges figures for this budget estimate year. There's, suddenly there's a big leap in external recharges, and there's quite a big decrease in the internal recharge income. It's Appendix 2, the bottom of page 28.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Gilroy. I think the main reason for that is primarily the services now coming within this directorate come from DG First, and therefore there's a number of internal recharges where we deliver services to other council departments. And as far as I understand, that's what that figure relates to. So previously it wasn't part of CCS, whereas it's now part of the community's budget, so hence why there's a change from what it previously was.
So is that the external recharges that you're talking about there, or the internal? Because they've gone down from the internal and they've gone up from the...
Yep. So, as you say, the outturn for 15-16 is external recharges, which is clearly reducing in terms of this year quite substantially. The reason for the higher external recharges last year, I can only assume it simply doesn't relate to the CCS committee, so it's been a transfer from another council committee, and that's where, quite honestly, saying to members that this is a degree of change, and therefore the historical information is a disaggregation of previous council committees. So I'm not sure of some of the details, for example, from DG First.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 29, the last paragraph, and looking at transfer of youth work and adult learning to CYPLL, and it's not been possible to extract 2015-16 budget out. I think it's a reassurance that I'm looking for here in that particular organisation, CLD, at the moment, going to CYPLL, the services that they provide for young people and adult learners will continue during the transfer to the different departments. I do have some concerns that some of the staff are not being advised how quickly this is going, certainly from CYPLL, and obviously that's a really important piece of work that they're actually doing because of the austerity measures that we find that we're actually in today. We're seeing people losing their jobs left, right and centre. You know, you see Langham, for instance, there are 43 jobs going there where there are particularly young people who might need new learning, new training and things like that. So I just want a bit of reassurance that work continues in the future.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Just sorry, I should have also said in terms of Councillor Gilroy's question, I'm more than happy to come back with just a little bit more of an analysis on that because you raise a fair point and to make sure that you get that information. Thank you. In terms of Councillor Dryborough, be assured that certainly both myself and Director for SIPL are clear of the importance of the CLD services and this period of transition for those staff in particular we have acknowledged is probably at the highest level for all council staff, given the transition from some staff going into communities, some going to SIPL. So certainly what I can assure the member is that there's a full understanding of the importance of these services, the need to accelerate the speed in which there's certainty for those services and the staff affected, and previously indicated there's an implementation team being set up between both directorates with a view to ensuring that firstly we get the period of transition right, and ultimately we transfer that service smoothly in a manner that gives certainty to the staff involved, and just as importantly it provides service continuity to the public. So certainly assure you of my personal commitment to that activity over the next few months.
Okay. Graham? Okay.
Just a point of clarity with regards to the implementation team, is that staff at all levels that's involved in that implementation team?
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Yeah, in fact, it's gone beyond that. It's staff at all levels. Staff were asked to put their names forward, but secondly, most importantly, also has trade union representatives involved as well. And therefore, from our point of view, there's different geographical coverage, different staff levels, and the trade unions as well.
Thank you, Chair. It's in relation to Councillor Maitland's question. How do you propose to give us that information with regard to the management structures, etc., and numbers? Would it be a further report, or would it be? It's important that we get it, but would it be a further report, or would you just email us or send us out a paper copy?
Thank you, Chairman. What I've been doing, Councillor Nicholl, is certainly been going round the political groups with the management team, first and foremost, to actually have a discussion with you to give you clear illustration of the management structure, who's who, so there's a clear connectivity between yourself and the management staff across the directorate. What I would propose to do is make that information available to you hard copy as well as electronically, but also more than happy to come back round political groups to just discuss any particular parts of that information you want more information on. So I think it it'd be far more useful actually doing that on a group basis, and therefore giving you the chance to just clarify who the points of contact are, what the service responsibilities these managers have, and therefore it becomes a very kind of easy, simple guide for members to know who to contact, which is important, but also to give you the ability to analyse the service staffing numbers and the span of control that goes with that. So happy to provide that to all members, but to do so hard copy electronically, but also to come to political groups.
Any further questions? Right.
Yeah, Chair, it's really just that we're 6 months, aren't we? 6 months almost into this financial year of 2016-17, and I note in some of your paragraphs, Derek, 3.3, it is not anticipated there will be much change to the overall staff numbers, given we are in a state of flux and change to the structures. Is there any shocks in here in terms of service delivery and the services that the public, enjoy, if I could put it that way, in terms of libraries and other services that you anticipate?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Scobie. Certainly, I think all members appreciate that the financial position facing the Council is very difficult, and therefore we're back into a budget development process where we are projecting that we're going to have to make savings in the order of £20 million next year. So quite clearly, the picture going forward is, to say the least, challenging. I think for the Communities Directorate, what we've always had direction from members, and that's been most appreciated, has been that we've certainly gone out of our way to do an analysis of the unit costs of services, to look at when there's peaks of demand for services, when there's low demand. So ultimately, as far as we can, we are ensuring that the services are provided, but they're provided economically. And as you'll recall, last year, one of the key reasons we were in a position to balance the budget, as we've heard in the earlier report, was because members took direction in terms of those service activities and facilities that could be proportionately cut back without adversely impacting on the public. And I think indications from the public would suggest that that has been, in relative terms, very well received. I think going forward, we approved the business plan last month, and I would just remind members that the key philosophy of the Communities Directorate is to move to a position where we see communities taking an increased involvement, management and ownership of all sorts of facilities, and indeed reports later on this agenda reaffirm that. So it's increasingly a recognition that the budget's getting tight. We need to drive efficiency. We need to look for areas where we can protect the services, while at the same time where we can seek greater input from communities and volunteers. So I think the big shift, that I think rather than a shock really, I think the big shift is moving from a position of purely all council delivery to more of a partnership approach with council and communities. And clearly, as all members appreciate at a ward level, that's not something you impose overnight. It's a gradual process that takes time, and certainly to date we've achieved that. And as I say, later reports on both community facilities and public conveniences demonstrate that direction of travel.
Okay, any further questions? No. Happy to accept recommendations 2122. Okay. Move on to item 7, improving Dumfries and Galloway Council strategic and area grant arrangements, report by Director of Communities. We acknowledge that the grants have supported a range of local and regional organisations or activities over the years. This report provides an update to members on the move from strategic grants to commissioned services and presents a draft strategic framework for area committee grants with the move to standardise the associated administrative process. Members will be well aware of the savings that we made to grants over successive years, and it is vital therefore that future awards are targeted in a way that both supports community aspirations and contributes to the Council's objectives. And Colin Holmes will answer any questions on this. Members? Graham?
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 41, 3.3. I raised this sort of subject about Nestill Area Committee. All 4 area committees have agreed their own budget prioritised criteria and scoring framework for the use of discretionary grants. I know officers have got a difficult task ahead of them due to budget pressures and that, and there's a number of applicants come forward for grants at various areas committees, and the pot is getting smaller. One thing concerns me, it is a difficult challenge for members to make decisions, but I think, as I suggested at Nestdale Area Committee many months ago, and it was minuted, that we should have an independent body looking at this officers' decisions. I'm not blaming officers for making the decision, it's a difficult task, but if I had someone independent looking at it, it means that the council's open and transparent and that, things are above board. I'm not saying that it's not above board, but I think we've got to look at it that way because we're looking at a smaller budget and it needs to be tackled. And it was raised at Nestdale Area Committee. I wonder what your comments on that are.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not au fait with those discussions at Nestdale Area Committee, but certainly the officer scoring panel. I mean, if I guess potentially there's an option to broaden that further, but then you do potentially have conflicts of interest in that you can't have people on the scoring panel that are then actually making applications as well. I think the decision process is open and transparent in that, despite there being officer recommendations, the final decision is made by members at Area Committee, which is a public meeting, and certainly the frameworks before is that if members are varying from the officer recommendations, that they state their reasons for doing so. So I appreciate your comments are. Happy to have discussion further with members if that's necessary, and how to move things forward. But I think that the process that we have at the moment is open and transparent, while at the same time being efficient in terms of member time at committee.
Any further comments? Jim, then Patsy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm glad to hear that there isn't a proposal that it'll take away for the members that will decide what applications actually get funded. That was one of my points I was going to bring up, but I've already had that answered. It's regarding 3.310. So scoring applications will be the responsibility of the 4 ward managers and will involve the ward workers. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think the actual way this is going to work is we're going to have 13 ward workers and 4 of them will be ward managers, which means there'll also be a ward worker. I would worry that there may possibly be more weight put on a ward worker who's also a ward manager and what they say than what the other ward workers are going to say. I would think that ward workers, whether they're a manager or a worker, should have the same amount of input and the same amount of influence on what the scoring panel is, not just the 4 that are the ward workers, the 1 in each area.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's safe to say that the sort of award working arrangements are still taking shape, but certainly the panel would be for a particular area committee and wouldn't just involve ward workers. There would be times where it brings in other officers as well, where there's need for sort of any kind of specialist view in terms of scoring applications. What we're looking to work towards as well is that the actual scores that are reported to area committees are explicit in themselves, so that members are able to see quite clearly how they've been scored and what those scores are, so that the process is open and transparent and certainly not skewed. And despite the fact that ward workers and ward managers that will have individual responsibilities for a ward, they'll also be working together collectively as a team for the good of the area that they're working in. So I note your concerns, but I'm not sure that would be too much of an issue.
Yeah, the concerns are in the wording that it actually uses. Scoring of applications will be the responsibility of the 4 ward managers and will involve the ward workers. That means the ward workers, by definition, will have less input than a ward manager.
Maybe just clarify, Chairman. I think Councillor McClung raises a very reasonable point. The responsibility in this context is purely that the responsibility and accountability of the ward managers is to my colleague who's just come up to the table, Liz Manson. It's purely on that basis. Quite clearly, in any scoring panel situation, if you have a panel, there is no hierarchy in terms of status. And on that basis, I can assure the member, I think that's what he's alluding to, the status is they are all equal as ward workers in that particular situation. It's purely the responsibility of actually reporting to the committee is the ward manager.
I think that the important point there, if I could just say, was to explain that it will still be in a local area where that work will be done. It's not going to be centralised. I think that was what we were trying to explain in that paragraph.
Thank you. I think it's good that, we fast-track the smaller applications, because I think that seems to have worked, certainly in the Stewartry it does, and I'm pleased to see that that's going on. My question really is that, we go through all the scoring process, we do all that for the applications, but we're not very good at following up afterwards as to whether the money has actually delivered what it was meant to do. And I just wonder, we make people jump through hoops to get the money, but then we just say, well, here you are, off you go. And we don't seem to say, well, actually, was that money well spent? And as money gets tighter and more difficult to apply for, I think it's more important that we actually know that the money we have given out to groups is doing what it is meant to do. And I wonder how you would propose to do that, because I think it's important.
If I could just point you to page 51, which is the updating of the strategic framework. So that's what all the area committee budgets will need to follow. And the suggestion in there, we've added in a section which is that the application needs to demonstrate the effectiveness of the funding. What difference did their funding make to the specific area that they were awarded the money to do? And section 3 just highlights that point about we will make sure that there's appropriate monitoring and scrutiny throughout the year, dependent on the funding awarded. And there's a variety of ways in which we can do that, but certainly one commitment will be there'll be an end-of-year report to the area committee on each of the grants and what difference it made, what was the effectiveness. So I think that point has been picked up.
Any further points? Yen?
Thank you, Convener. My question is at page 45 on DG Voice and Dumfries and Galloway Care Trust Forestry and Gardening Project. What was the main reason for the delay of signing off the minutes of variation?
Thank you. In terms of a great level of detail, I'd need to confer with the lead officers for those organisations. But each of these organisations have a lead officer, and who then needs to meet with the organisation and agree the minute of variation and get it signed off. Some organisations and some lead officers were able to do that more quickly on others, but I'm not aware that there were any specific issues that prevented that happening, other than just the time it took for the administrative process to take place.
Thank you. Okay, so does that mean from 1st of April to 29th of July, say for example, Dumfries and Galloway Care Trust Forestry and Gardening Project, that means council's not going to give them the money to cover that period, or will it be covered during that time? Thanks.
Certainly, it shouldn't have been the case that that grant funding was issued prior to the minute of agreement being signed off, but the minute of agreement was for the current financial year. So once that's signed, then that should put them in a position for funding to then be released.
Yeah, Chair, and there's been reference made to open and transparency. Anthony Graham says he was not suggesting that there was anything that wasn't open and transparent. I'd be interested to see what that actually means. But, and then there was another reference made to members actually deciding on the grant awards. And what I'm looking for is the assurance, not in moving forward, but also in looking back, that all grant applications to the council, and let it be by discretionary grants to the area committees, or indeed at the strategic committee, that most of these grants are referred to in the appendix, would have been the subject to, and that's that they go through a proper scrutiny, that they are all put through the scoring panel system, and the scoring panel system is well documented in terms of its makeup and the different makeups in each of the 4 areas. So what I'm looking for is that all have been and will follow the same procedure in that they will go through a scoring panel, and that the members get the fullest of information before they actually take the final decision.
As I understand it, yes, the approach has been that members see the scores that the panels produce, that you get that information in advance. And certainly what we're trying to do is just improve consistency in terms of the application process and make it as efficient and streamlined as possible. But there'll be no change to the information that's provided to members to allow you to have time to consider these applications before you make the decision.
Yeah, Chair, I know it's difficult for Liz, to possibly answer in the past, but I just want that she is confident as much as that all have followed that due process.
As far as I can see, looking back on the approach that's been taken to date, yes, I think that members do get all the information that's come through the scoring panel.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things. One, I'm looking here at the list, and there's a number of them here that have either got mental health, psychological health, general health connotations attached to them. And I know that there's some movement in terms of the integration joint board working with your department, this department. But I'm really quite worried here that, for example, counselling for men with prostate cancer shouldn't be coming to a council committee. That's a health problem, and that should be getting recommissioned back through, I would suggest, through the integrated joint board, because that budget's already been devolved from both the NHS and local authority to them. There's a number of things in here, about social work, health and housing services, the Dumfries Women's Aid, for example, exactly the same again. So I'm a bit worried here is that the budget for the integrated joint board for the council's contribution to that is pretty much set. Then this is over and above that. So this needs to be counted in with that contribution so that people can actually see exactly what the council is putting into integration of health social care. And the second thing, just if I'm getting this right, the ward workers in the main are there as the principal or the early point of contact for an organisation who wants to be a commission service for advice and help to put together applications to make sure they meet the criteria and everything else. So I'm really a bit worried here if the same people are then going to assess them, right, and then recommend to councillors where the ultimate decision would be. So do we, for example, I was going to ask, do we say, for example, that in the Wigtonshire context, the stewardship managers would actually have do the scoring, because the criteria is quite very clear in each of the 4 areas, and that way we would actually have a clear mark between those who are supporting the organisations and those who are actually looking at the bids that come in, so that we can say with absolute certainty there is no conflict of interest between the ward managers. It's to protect them, I would suggest, rather than have a go at them. I'm absolutely certain that when we're sitting looking in Nithsdale Area Committee, that it's not the Nithsdale ward workers. They've supported the application to come to us, but the actual scoring has been done by somebody independent.
I'll pick off first, Chair, if that's okay. Thanks. Councillor Ferguson. In terms of the integrated joint board, what I would say is you're absolutely right that there's close working with this director. I've previously acknowledged your assistance with that, and on that basis, those particular services that I think particularly related to were domestic abuse, relationship support services, support to children and young people, clearly very much sit within the SIPL remit, and therefore what we're showing in Table 1 is these would quite clearly go into that directorate. It would then, as part of that discussion, and I've already had discussions with Colin Grant and Lillian Kringles on this, it would be for them to then, through their committee, work through just what the relationship, what the budget position is with the integrated joint board. So you're absolutely right, that is something that's an ongoing consideration. In terms of the ward workers and the scoring, well, it's interesting because probably it sounds like you were party to the management team discussion when we were drafting this report, because that's exactly the discussion we had, and therefore more than happy to just summarise what you've indicated, Councillor Ferguson, is that there's benefits in local knowledge, local information on a scoring panel. There are disadvantages in being too close to the situation. What we were certainly keen about at this time is what we don't want to be doing is unnecessarily making change that's not necessary. And certainly our understanding of previous arrangements had been that the scoring had been done by locally based officers, and broadly speaking that seemed to be working. We certainly have no difficulty if there's a view from area committees and from this committee that says if it's subjective scoring, that can be done by officers out with that area. We're certainly happy to consider that if that's the committee view. As I say, the understanding we had was that the existing arrangement has worked well, local knowledge in overall terms has been useful. Clearly, where an officer has the potential for a conflict of interest, that's something they need to consider. And the advice would always be, if that conflict is such, they possibly wouldn't be involved in a particular scoring of a specific application. So again, that's a way of dealing with that. So very much, as I say, on balance, the view we took was to continue with the existing arrangement, but quite clearly reaffirm the need for consistency. And as I've said, we will certainly remind officers of the need to ensure that their impartiality is beyond question for obvious reasons.
It's just on the same point, just to clarify what Derek has just said. I think what I heard him saying is that the ward worker's job is to advise, you know, where organisations can go for funding applications, and that's just not in council as well. That's all other organisations. I think that's the difference between supporting and advising. Supporting would have to say that particular conflict of interest. Advising, however, is something that we all should do for all these organisations, and I think that there's that many opportunities for awards elsewhere at the moment rather than council. We should be advising them to go there in the first instance, because of course the discretionary grant is supposed to be the last port of call.
Thank you. It's a very specific one, Chairman, which is the peer project and the table 1 talking about the commissions for support to children and young people. I don't want it now, but I'm just putting down a marker that I think we've got to have a clear explanation about what's happening with the peer project monies in the Stewardship. Stewardship was darkly suspicious that the peer project was going to be funded through a vacancy in CLD. And it said at the time, I don't think so. We want to know more about that. Now, we haven't had a kind of completion of that process. And I know earlier, we've seen earlier that it's come through a service reserve allocation for last year. That's what's come in a previous report. And I just don't want to lose sight of the Stewardship Area Committee getting information as to where that is coming from, please. That's just something, it's a marker at this stage. It doesn't need to be answered now, it's just I hope it could be done as something in the future.
That's fine, okay. Any further questions? No. Members happy to accept the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3? Okay. Move on to item 8, Community Facilities Review Update, report by Head of Civic and Local Services. This committee has overseen the Community Facilities Review and we've taken a measured approach to its successful delivery. I'm pleased that we now have reached a conclusion with 28 of the 29 facilities. Therefore, we're now close to securing the revenue budget savings of £280,000 per annum. The report also highlights the need to bring matters to a conclusion in relation to Port Patrick Village Hall, and I'm sure with the support of ward members and officers, the community will want to take the opportunity to have greater involvement with the management of this facility. And Harry Thompson's here to answer any questions. Members? Willie?
Yeah, Chair, it just was on your last remark on the Patrick Hall, and I think we've got to recognise, and indeed Derek referred to it, that we've got to take the public with us in terms of community asset. I have had a meeting with Derek and Harry and two of the community organisations, and they are of a mind that they want to take this forward. But I don't think we should be imposing where it's necessary, indeed, where there are time constraints being referred to in this document. I would hope we can work with the community, so the community do at the point where they feel confident that everything is okay in any transfer of assets, let it be a hall, toilets or whatever, that they are satisfied and feel they have the confidence in taking on the management of that. And I would hope that is the spirit of the committee in moving forward, in working with the communities to a point where they feel confident that they want to take on the management and indeed the total transfer of any asset that we are looking at. So I would hope we can note that position today.
Chair, simply that the committee has previously, or the predecessor committee previously took the decision to transfer 32 or to move 32 of the facilities to transfer or to alternatives, and 28 29 of those have 28 of the 29 have achieved, and Patrick is the remaining outstanding facility, subject to the other three moving forward as detailed within the report. A significant number of facilities have moved out of authority ownership management, and we'll seek to continue that process with Kirkpatrick and bring back a report in October on the position as regards Kirkpatrick. Committee may then have to determine a way forward at that point.
Chair, it's just on the perhaps the overall side of things. I think there was a big list, if you remember, at the previous on some of the asset transfer, and of course some of the communities, of course, were concerned about that. But I have to say that within my own ward, that the director and the officers working with the community groups have given that reassurance that they're actually going to work with the organisations rather than against the organisations in hopefully transferring some of the facilities. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Derek and his team for actually working with those community groups and hopefully taking a positive step forward.
Any further questions? Andy, then.
It's kind of tongue-in-cheek when I'm trying to work out how we managed to get the organisations to pay for their maintenance before they'd signed the agreement. Because the agreements are all getting signed next year, and they've been paying for them for the last financial year. I'm not looking for an in-depth investigation. I'm just kind of sort of complimenting the officers for managing to pull that one off, if that's the case.
Okay, Patsy.
Two quick questions. It's to do with Dromore Hall, but it's a wider context as well. When an asset is transferred to something like the Trust for less than best consideration, is that the total ownership of that building or facility? And is there anything put in place whereby that should it be sold at a later date for a lot of money, that the council have any comeback on that? And the other thing, just out of interest, how did they manage to get it delisted? Was that an onerous task, or was it relatively simple? Because I'm sure there's one or two others floating around the area that would quite like to have that done.
Chair, in terms of the less than best consideration, the ownership would transfer to the acquiring body. It would be a transfer of title. However, there would be conditions put onto that transfer in terms of if they disposed of the property at any point, then there may be conditions imposed that it returns, either reverts to the council or is transferred to another body for the purpose for which it's transferred. So it's transferred for less than best consideration on the basis of the purpose that it's going to be put to. In terms of delisting, I would have to concede that I'm not au fait with the detail of that. I can certainly ask for detail to be conveyed to you.
Yeah, just in relation to Andy's question, just with experience with working with Nelson House at Eastriggs, is that they obviously realised the the movement on where the council are going with regards to these facilities, but they felt that rather than taking the giant leap of actually, they'd rather take that step of actually taking on the maintenance cost until they actually get enough of a committee to actually take forward what they see as a much larger step. So I think most of them have agreed to take on that, but it's just about actually getting facilities in place and people in place.
Thank you, Sean. Any further questions? Okay. Members happy to accept the recommendation? Oh, sorry, Graham. Sorry.
Thank you. I'll get a spec cleaning kit for you folk. But anyway, it's with regard to what the point that Councillor Gilroy raised with regard to transfer something for £1. It was fairly vague, the return process, if you like. Could Harry be more specific? I think it should be very firm that if they decide to sell it, that there is some formula drawn up whereby the money, it comes back to the council before it's sold, or there should be something, it should be firm. It shouldn't be. Harry's answer was vague, and I'm just wondering if it's a more definite structure is put into place here.
As Councillor Nicholl will know, I'm a master of the vague answer.
I've listened to it for many years, Harry.
Yeah, the community asset transfer process is currently being revised. In any case, Liz can probably deal with the detail, but
I'm sure you'll be aware from your business plan that you have a specific requirement to update your asset transfer strategy to have a comprehensive approach. And so Jamie Ferguson, who's just taken up post, is working with Louise Matheson to make sure that the approach that we have is robust, and that very issue about what we do to make sure that any transfers we do make are made with a longer term future in mind. And as I understand it, there is a facility when we're making the agreement to transfer that the council can insert clauses about what happens in certain types of scenarios. And it does perhaps, we can put in a clause that prevents an organisation from selling a building within a certain time, or we can indeed put something in that if we sell the building for a certain amount of money, then a proportion of that would come to the council. So at the point of negotiating the conditions of the transfer, the Policy and Resources Committee, as I understand it, have put in such clauses in the ones that we've done to date. And so when we're developing up the strategy, I think that's an area that we'll certainly be making more explicit about what the options would be for that, so that when the members are making the decision about the transfer, they can decide which, if any of these clauses, they would want to insert in that particular case. But I understand it's very much a case-by-case basis, and that when the Policy and Resources Committee are looking at the transfer, that advice is given in great detail.
Andy?
Thanks very much. After I put my hand up, I think Liz almost answered the question for me, because it's as long as it's on a case-by-case basis, not a blanket, we want that back, for example, if you fold, because all we'd be doing, if as long as that is based on a proper assessment of the value and everything else, and the value to the community, everything, then yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So it's been answered basically.
I certainly know from past experience, if council or its predecessor sold something for less than value, you had to get permission of Scottish ministers, as it was at the time. But you could put a clause in then, if they sold it at a massive profit, then because they got it for less than value, it was a kickback to the council. And I think that was outlawed in a change in the law some years ago with regard to not so much few duties, but people have the right to claim land from the past. But it's something that we should get searched out, and I think that information should come to members, because if we're not putting safeguards in there for the public purse, and we certainly should be. And I think if we get a full report to the next committee meeting, I think that would be adequate. Members happy with that? Okay. Anybody else? Sean?
Chair, you covered most of that because I was going to suggest a report coming to a future committee. I think as well, though, we need to actually, within that as well, we need to have the contingency for sometimes maybe if a facility does fold because the management committee or the organisation is taking it over, there may be situations where the council may have to take that building back on if they're providing services that cannot be provided anywhere else within that community. So I think it's worthwhile that we see all the different situations that could arise from a building actually being returned.
Yep. Okay, members happy with that? Happy to accept the recommendations 2122. Thank you. Move on to item 9, which is updating public conveniences report by Head of Civic and Local Services. This report highlights the standardised arrangements now in place for public conveniences, as well as seeking members' approval for officers to undertake proactive communication with ward members and local communities in relation to any community asset transfer process. And Harry's happy to answer any questions, and hopefully not vaguely, on this report. Members, any questions? Happy to accept the recommendations? Okay, thank you. Item 10 is minute of ad hoc subcommittee and rates leave, 7th July. Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Item 11, any other business deemed urgent by Chairman due to need for decision? I have no, sorry Willie.
Yeah, Chair, if you would accept under any other business, and that's just to recognise the tremendous achievement of the Lochrayan pipe band that came forth in the World Championship, the World Pipe Band Championships last weekend, and it's to recognise and record that achievement that they have made in moving forward. And I have asked governance to look at the possibility of an appropriate recognition, and no doubt it will come back to yourself in this committee, Chair. But it's just to put on record the tremendous achievement of the Lochrayan Pipe Band and the way that they carry Stranraer and Dumfries and Galloway forward.
Members happy to note that and accept the good wishes. Not like we want to blow his own chanter. Councillor Syme.
On the same vein, Chair, if we could congratulate Gib Fraser from Kirkconnell that once again won the Junior Drum Major World Champion.
Okay, we'll do that as well. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 11, any other business deemed urgent by the Chairman due to need for a decision? I have none, and now move the local government